Hi everyone. Um, my name is Eugene, and I'm quite a data nerd. So I personally, the topics I find enjoyable are not enjoyable by a lot of people. I like all this clever DAX coding and the new features about that Microsoft releases into Power BI. So if I talk about these things to you guys, you would probably find them really interesting, and I do as well. But when I talk to my dashboard users about these things, they find them really, really boring. And, I've kind of felt it on a number of occasions. For example, when I was starting my career as a contractor, people would ask me, so why should we trust you with our budget? And at this point, I would start talking all about my credentials and the technical nuances of Power BI that I know of. But looking back, it's not what business users needed to hear. What they wanted to hear is that I understand the business value that they're looking for and I know how to get them there. So over time, I've kind of learned to speak about Power BI in kind of in a business language more than a technical language. And I've also developed my own process, which I now use on my Power BI projects. So this process is essentially helping me to make sure that I understand the business requirements and um, the business users of my dashboards understand how they can get value out of them. So the process that I use really does several things. First of all, it's kind of planning before we start. It's planning the business value behind every visual that we develop. It's showing what the dashboard would look like to my dashboard users. But it also gives them more confidence that we actually have a reason for everything that we're building. So today I want to um, talk to you about the process that I use. I want to go through a real life case study of how this process could be applied, but I also want to brainstorm together with you on different other ways that this process could be applied. So I just want to mention, the process that I used, like you guys don't have to adopt the same process. It's just what works for me. It's more of a way to structure your thoughts about kind of planning for the business value behind your dashboards. So you can take bits of it and create your own process, or you can just kind of freestyle it and but keep it at the back of your head. So yeah, whatever works for you. Um, so before I start the presentation, I want to answer this question on the GIF. So I got into data analytics in the university. I've got my master's in business analytics from the University of Surrey. I then went on to work for Autodesk for 3 years. It's a big software company. So they hired me as a test case to test how Power BI would work for them instead of Excel. So I developed a few dashboards for them. Some of them went to C-suite, so I used to have the CEO and CFO of Autodesk in my distribution list. Um, after Autodesk, I started taking on contracting work. I founded Vidi Corp, which is now my Power BI consultancy. So my biggest success in working in Vidi Corp was creating a couple of dashboards for Tikkurila, which is a Finnish chemical manufacturing company. I've done a couple of dashboards for Delta Airlines. This year, I had two big projects. One was for a global head of compliance at Google, and another one was for global head of marketing in Teleperformance, which is one of the biggest outsourcing companies. So yeah, now that we've got this out of the way, I just want to talk you through my process. So So as step one, I would have a call with my clients and I would ask them to tell me all about their business, kind of I would ask them questions like, what is bothering you? When did it start? You know, what are you hoping to achieve? Do you think the problems you're having have something to do with your childhood, and etc. etc. So they tell me all about it. And as step one, we just gather all the business questions and put them on a document. So at the end of it, it looks something like this. So it's a bit unstructured at the minute. So I just need to kind of structure my thoughts around how I would communicate this to people. And the way I would do this, I would find recurring topics within these business questions, and I would try to group these questions by those topics. So at the end of step two, it would look something like this. Um, and this would kind of form the foundation for my Power BI report. So I'd have a page to analyze hours, a page to analyze profit, a page to analyze utilization. So as step three, I would take each individual question from here, and um, I would start planning for what data can I use to answer this question, what visual I would use. So I would take a screenshot either from my previous work or from internet, and yeah, essentially I would create this, but for every single business question that we've written down. So um, yeah, basically, I forgot to mention it before. The reason I'm telling it to you guys, so I'm hoping what you can get out of this presentation is, if you are about to kind of scope a dashboard for a client, I'm hoping this would help you explain how exactly your dashboard will bring them value. Um, so if you're a contractor, um, well, for me at least, it helps me to win projects. So might help you with that. Um, if you're an internal Power BI developer, it's something you can use to kind of sell your dashboards internally, to kind of sell the project to the management. Um, but yeah, ultimately, it's a way to explain the business users how exactly they can extract the value out of the dashboards, because people, there are very non-technical users. So explaining it to them and breaking it down to them like that sometimes helps. Also, the documents that we create at the end of the project, they become documentation. So it kind of, it is a point of reference for the dashboard users. So yeah, that's basically my process. And at this point, I'd like to make my presentation a bit more interactive. So let's take a real life case study and just kind of see what this process could look like when we apply it. So let's take a hypothetical company. Well, it is a real company, but well, without a name. So the company organizes corporate events, and those could be either trade shows or conferences. So it organizes those events for clients. They had two stages of their event delivery. They have event pre-processing. So let's say in their own warehouse, they pre-assemble the sets, they um, prepare the equipment, and then they do the on-site work where they actually deliver the events on the day. So this company bills their clients by hour. Um, it also gets invoices from its resources by the hour. So there is hourly billing and hourly expenses. So their business problem was making sure that their events are profitable and can finding factors for why profitability could vary versus the expectation. So those are the problems that the clients came with. Um, so on my previous slides, I already had the output from stages 1 and 2, the business questions. So now I want to take some business questions from there and put them into exercises. So here's the first one. So let's say you have a data set for the quoted hours. So you could see the event ID, when the event happened, and the number of hours that were quoted for this event. You also have actual hours. So you have the event ID, the number of hours, and when the event happened. So their business problem was, um, their business question was, um, what is the typical variance of expected versus actual hours that we spent on different events? So you guys can see the data right now. Does someone have any ideas for kind of what formula we can use, how we can present it, just on top of your head? Anyone? There isn't a right or wrong answer, by the way. It's like as I said, it's just the way to communicate information. So your communication style could be different from mine. So yeah. Well, I'll kick it off. For example, we could take the event ID. We could try to calculate for this event ID how many hours was spent, how many hours were quoted. We could take the average between all of them. Like that's one way of putting it. Um, any other ideas? No? Okay. Um, so my answer to this company was creating a histogram-like chart. So let's say we are showing the distribution of how many events they have by variance group. So this way they don't just get a single number, but they get kind of the distribution within the data set. So for example, here you can see that the negative distribution is a bit more prevalent than positive distribution. So yeah, that was one of them. Second question they were asking, what are the main reasons driving positive and negative variance of profit? At this point, ideally we would have a reason column within our data sets and we would just visualize things, but you know, it's not an ideal world situation, so we kind of have to make hypotheses of why there is the difference in profit. So does anyone have any hypothesis of why there could be difference? Just to remind you, they have their billing clients by the hour, their expenses are hourly from their resources. So what could happen? Yeah, yeah, like if their resources charge them more than they initially planned, maybe a resource was substituted, maybe it was a more junior resource, senior. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah, yeah, that's true. So if somebody quoted incorrectly, um, yeah, yeah, yeah. So kind of whether a resource performed according to expectations. So maybe they expected a certain amount of hours and they quoted for it, but resource worked a bit slower, so that led to the difference. In fact, you guys are really smart. Change rates, yeah. Um, mhm. Yeah. Um, well, that's kind of the doom and gloom in the news right now. But yeah, that could be one of the reasons as well. This company is UK based, so it wasn't the case for them. But like I could see how this could happen. Yeah. But yeah, in fact, you guys named all the reasons that I have in my next slide. So um, yeah, and if the first question is, do salespeople quote for jobs accurately? So we want to understand who can we hold accountable for a difference in profit, because yeah, essentially that's what makes the dashboard actionable. So the second question that they had is whether resources perform, along the expected number of working hours, and also what is the effect of the seniority change for the profit. So yeah, especially for service-based companies, it's kind of you get most of your profit by a combination of expensive and less expensive resources. So you want to have ideally like a low proportion of expensive working hours and high proportion of less expensive working hours. So let's break each of these down. Um, do salespeople quote for jobs accurately? So we have a table for the quoted hours by salesperson. We also have the table for actual hours spent on each event. We have the event ID in both tables. So yeah, what do you guys think? What could our formula? How can we visualize it? Mm. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, so kind of the number of times that they quoted for a job and their average variance. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Any other ideas? So I just went with a simple data visualization here, but it's the sum of quoted hours, sum of actual hours by salesperson, and kind of yeah, just show the total hours quoted, total actual hours. And as you can see on this graph, this is probably like salespeople generally quote for more hours than they work. So salespeople actually do quite a good job selling. So, well, I won't tell their clients. So, yeah, do resources perform accurately versus quotes? So again, we have similar tables. We have the resource ID. So this column here for item ID is essentially the resource, and the initials of the resource are here, the actual table. So yeah, what do you think? Similar type of analysis, similar type of KPI? Maybe we could do like the number of jobs that the resource was involved into and their average variance as well. That would be a good one. Sometimes I find it's useful to have some consistency. So like I went with the exactly same charts as the last time. It just helps people to kind of get used to a certain format and interpret it. Again, and like instead of learning how to interpret different charts, just give them the same chart and the chart that they're used to. So the next one is quite interesting actually, the seniority, because I had some problems with it. So in this case, we have the same tables, quoted and actuals. We also have a user setup table, and this band is essentially the seniority. So band A is most senior, band E is less senior. So we know the number of hours that was quoted for the specific resources. We know
the number of hours that they utilize on every project. So yeah, it's a bit of a tricky one, but yeah, if we're measuring seniority change, then potentially we want to see which bands the resource was quoted for and whether the resource from the same band was used, right? Um, so that's what I did in the beginning, but that's what I got. Sometimes you could see that they quote for only one resource, like in this case, in the first row, only one set of initials, but they utilize a lot of resources. So how do you measure seniority change in this case? Do you have any ideas for work? It's a bit hard. Sorry to put you on the spot, but like, yeah, like the main challenge is that we have one resource was expected and several resources who were utilized. So we like that's the main challenge here. What I thought we could do is we could maybe average the seniority resources. So if there are 6 resources that were utilized, maybe you could find the average seniority. The challenge here is that the resource bands are text filled, like A to E. So it's kind of like the solution I came up with is a multi-step process. So as step one, so this is a single event in the top table. So the step one was assigning a seniority score to a resource, kind of 0.2 to 1, 1 being most senior. So the second step was calculating the weighted working hours, weighted by this seniority score. And the third step was dividing this by the actual amount of hours that was spent. So this gives us a ratio for the seniority. So, and this also gives us some context on the proportion of expensive and less expensive working hours. Because as you see, for example, in this case, most hours were spent by the resource in band C rather than D. So it accounts for that. And this gives us our seniority score for the event. And what I did is you could calculate that for the um, data set for the quoted events. You can also calculate it for the data set for the actual time that was spent. So this gives you two numbers, seniority score for an event, which is expected and actual. And you can compare the two to work out whether this, on average, more senior resources were utilized or less senior resources were utilized. So yeah, this was a bit complex, and in fact, we added some simpler visuals to kind of explain what's happening there. But that was kind of my take on measuring this problem. So yeah, um, that's it. So yeah, if you want to get like a version of this document, just connect with me on LinkedIn and send me a message. Like I'll send it to you what one of these documents look like. So feel free to take like bits and pieces of it and use it for your own projects, or just kind of use it for inspiration. So yeah, thank you. Any questions? Was my first speech, don't throw tomatoes at me.